it's partly it's just a matter of luck that journalists that happen to reach out to me on the story more generally, I was able to actually interest a number of them in this. And I wrote a piece myself in The Guardian, which of course is one of the UK's more serious broadsheet national daily newspaper. But there's also been 2 or 3 tabloid newspaper reports that have mentioned it. The tabloids, the UK tabloids, are a mixed bag. There are obviously some fairly questionable UFO stories in there, but it's one of the kind of dirty little secrets of this subject that actually some of the biggest scoops, particularly about the ATIP program and related issues such as congressional interest, have actually first made an appearance in UK tabloid newspapers. So that's another interesting side of all this. And just to round off our discussion about congressional interest, I shouldn't forget to mention that actually the space subcommittee and the main science, technology and space committee have also had at least a think about this. And there was a Politico live event where a question about ATIP was raised, and Representative Amy Barra said, yes, I have had discussions with the chair of the space subcommittee and the chair of the main committee about doing something. Now, I've lost sight of where that stands, whether the space subcommittee and the main science committee are going to take an interest in this. I suspect that with the Senate and House Armed Services Committee looking at this, and with ATIP being a military and an intelligence program, that they would say hands off. But hey, that's way above my pay grade.
Mm-hmm. Hey, I'm wondering, thinking about ATIP, I chatted a couple of months ago with Jeremy Corbell, filmmaker. He's very well plugged into a lot of these issues, and his one of the things that he said was that a lot of that money that was, the New York Times just wrote, that was going to the ATIP program, in fact, went to the study of the Bigelow Ranch. And I'm sure you've heard this as well. I don't have any reason to doubt this. My question is, have you been following the, the claims about the Bigelow Ranch? And this includes current stuff where it said that, there's new owners of that ranch that have gotten some military interest in this place as a potential, what do we call it, a portal or some other place where all of this strangeness is happening, and that has received, military attention. Are you familiar with any of this? Is this something that's interesting to you?
I've been following the story with interest. Absolutely. I can't confess to be a deep specialist on it. I know, as you say, Jeremy has been very deeply plugged into that, has a film out about it, I believe, Hunt for the Skinwalker or something like that, Search for the Skinwalker. But as you say, he's very well plugged in with some of the people who have been both directly and indirectly involved with this. I don't have to tell you, I know you're well aware, of course, it's very murky trying to get to the bottom of all the different entities that have looked at this, pun intended, I guess, from dating back to Robert Bigelow's NIDS organization, his National Institute for Discovery Science, then BAASS, his advanced aerospace, that part of the Bigelow empire, so to speak. And then at what point ATIP or any part of the US government starts to take an official interest in this. I think the lines are somewhat blurry with this. We know that Bigelow Aerospace got some of the ATIP contract work. We know that Robert Bigelow, of course, has a close personal interest in this. So sometimes, and now, of course, with the To the Stars Academy, which you might almost characterize as a sort of post-ATIP research and lobbying effort. I don't know whether that's a fair description or not, but again, clearly some of the personalities and some of the issues are the same. Yes, it doesn't surprise me that if somebody went to government and said, look, here is a location where this notoriously hard to pin down phenomenon can be studied, it's right there, take a look. It doesn't surprise me that someone would do just that. Why not? It goes back to what we were talking about threats and opportunities, which is always the lens through which government look at this phenomenon, and indeed a whole bunch of other things. And again, it doesn't surprise me that somebody would study this. It's what you call low probability, high impact. Chances are it won't work, but hey, if it does, the payoff is so great that we'd better be in this game. So I don't know all the details, but it doesn't surprise me that somebody officially would be looking not just at UAP, but at things like Skinwalker Ranch. Why not?
Well said. I agree. I think that does make sense. I think they were actually really looking into it. And according to Jeremy, we're quite concerned about it. Do you have an opinion about, when we were at the disclosure panel a week ago in Baltimore, I guess it was maybe even more than a week ago, but we were there with Steve Bassett. And I love Steve. I've known him for years, as you have. And I've had friendly debates with him for the longest time over disclosure. And as you know, and as probably anyone who knows Steve knows, for Steve, disclosure it's like right around the corner. It's going to happen. There's going to be a breakthrough. And I would always do a little bit of an eye roll and say, no, I don't think it's going to happen this year. It will happen one day. I do believe that there will be a greater openness on this, but I've never actually believed that it was going to happen imminently. But but I'm bringing this up here because his position is, and it's actually not, I don't know where I stand on this. I've disagreed, and sometimes in my heart, I've wondered maybe does he have a point? And his point is that with Hillary Clinton, when she was running for president, Steve was convinced that she was going to be the disclosure president. I've never believed this, but you've got the whole Podesta connection, as her campaign manager, his interest in UFOs, the conversations that Podesta had with Tom DeLonge and Tom's original group of high-level people, General McCaslin and the two other individuals, one with Lockheed, that gets outed through WikiLeaks. They run away. DeLonge then reboots, at least one could interpret it this way, a group that becomes TTSA. You've got Hal Puthoff, Semivan, Luis Elizondo, and the rest. Hillary loses. That was not the plan, as most people expected her to win. And in Bassett's interpretation, what was going to be an official government-backed disclosure instead morphed into this private initiative, TTSA. Do you have any opinion on any of this? Like, does that make sense to you? Do you think that there would have been a disclosure initiative if Hillary had been elected? I realize this is all speculation, but I'm just wondering if you've ever had an opinion on this. Sure.
I don't think Steve Bassett has a very binary view of disclosure. To him, it is a single event disclosure with a big D, as I call it, and it is the archetypal, my fellow Americans, people of the world, we are not alone, parting of the curtains, revelation of the crashed saucer in the Air Force hangar, whatever it is. I think I don't think we're ever going to be in that territory. As to the whole Hillary and Podesta initiative, I would flip it around. I don't think it's the case that Hillary Clinton and John Podesta knew about an alien presence, an extraterrestrial reality, whatever phrase you want to use, and were going to reveal it. I think there would have been an initiative, but I think the initiative was Clinton and Podesta and others, we want to find out if there's more. Hey, Bill Clinton looked at it when he was president, didn't find anything, was told there was nothing. We, Hillary Clinton, John Podesta, and others, wonder whether that was true, whether they looked in the right places, whether they asked the right people. We're going to have another look. So I think if you listen to Hillary's interviews on this, it's not, I'm going to reveal this. It's more, I'm going to look into this and then decide, depending on what I find, what we might be able to tell the American people. Now, I actually met John Podesta back in June 2011, I think it was, at a private briefing in DC, I think it was, with a number of other people who've been involved and on the fringes of this.
You probably remember this better than I do. I thought it might be maybe a private aircraft causing disruption.
Right, which would be suicide.
Yeah, it doesn't sound credible, frankly.
Well, and something else also, Richard, related to that, talking about the documents, something that other people have put forward is that, well, maybe what these witnesses saw were our military planes. We have a memo between two generals. General DeWitt, I believe, was the one general. And he states, matter of factly, and this is in the batch of documents we have pertaining to the Battle of LA from the National Archives, he states that many witnesses thought they saw United States planes. However, none of our planes were dispatched. Now, some people thought that was just showing how impotent the military was with regard to the coastal defense. Mm-hmm. The general goes on to state, the pilots were basically in their planes on the runways ready to take off. But they thought that whatever was witnessed was a reconnaissance plane that was basically the lead force, if you will, and that the main attack was getting ready to hit. They said, we did not want to dispatch our planes prematurely and have them half out of fuel once the main assault occurred.
Oh, that seems quite reasonable.
In the military's defense, they did have planes ready. Pilots were in the planes ready to go. But an interesting little comment was also made. The general stated in 1942, February 42, they only had 45 fighter planes for air defense for California at that time.
My goodness, not much.
15 planes in 3 different locations, he stated. And he said, we did not want these 45 planes to be up half out of fuel when the main assault occurred. So there's an official statement that we had no United States military planes in the air. So right. Let's just kind of go back through what we were talking about earlier, especially for those that just joined us. We already ascertained the Japanese had no military involvement that morning based on official declarations. We have no military planes in the area. Balloons really seem to stretch credulity in the way that this object moved. And this is the other thing. If the object that was fired on and visually sighted is the same object that was tracked on radar, are we really going to concede that a weather balloon drifted 120 miles out over the Pacific only to then come back in and be tracked on radar, or a barrage balloon? And then that same balloon drifts in towards Hollywood, California, towards Los Angeles, then drops down south, waits 20 minutes, does a U-turn, and reverses direction back over the greater LA area.
Yeah, it's not credible. It's just not credible. So now, before we get into the implications of this, in other words, look, we're ruling out aircraft, we're ruling out balloons. I don't know what other kind of phenomena, frankly, this could be, other than something that's manufactured that we didn't make. We can get into that. Sure. Are you familiar with now this is, of course, very much more controversial, but I will confess to you that I don't rule some of these out, which are the Majestic documents that Ryan Wood and Bob Wood have on their website, majesticdocuments.com.
Yeah.
I've been thinking a lot about these documents lately, and for the record, I intend to look for Ryan Wood in the near future to chat with him about these, because truth is, it's very easy for people to say, oh, they're all hoaxes, they're all nonsense, they're not legitimate National Archive documents. But I am aware of a lot of the research that Ryan and Bob Wood have done, and a number of other people too, Nick Redfern and a bunch of others.
Sure.
to analyze these documents. And I am personally not convinced that they are all fake. I think that they could very well be genuine. And one of these does concern the event in Los Angeles from that evening, or that morning. And do you have an opinion on this, or do you just kind of put that over to the side and let it go? It's fair to let it go, but I just wonder what you think.
Yeah, I've looked at it. I've looked at the details contained in that document. I tend to be on the skeptical side with documents of unknown provenance. And when I look at that document, there's just a number of things that really stand out. It's one of those documents. And again, to your point, Richard, I don't think we should paint with a broad brush. I don't think you should summarily accept or refute all these documents. But the one in particular that you're talking about, if it's the same one I'm thinking of, it does reference the Battle of LA. It also, I believe, talks about downed
crash-retrieval.
Crash-retrieval. But if I'm not mistaken, it's been a while since I've looked at that one. It also references the airship sightings of 1897 as a historical context for these mysterious objects. And then if I'm not mistaken, it also even references John F. Kennedy in some strange, bizarre reference.
As a congressman.
Yes. So
yes.
I found it, to me, the document almost seemed too good to be true. It was weaving too many common elements of the UFO mythology into it. And again,
in fairness, and I'm not going to defend this here,
sure,
but in fairness, JFK there's a lot of evidence that he was really groomed early on through the 1940s, through the Second World War. I mean, of course, he had a very powerful father.
Sure, Joe.
And so, there's that argument to be made that Kennedy was kind of dipped into this world and guided along. But I agree with you. It seems a bit too good to be true.
Well, and the retrievals, there was a lot of people. I mean, let's be honest with you. This didn't happen outside Roswell, New Mexico, which I'm very familiar with. I'm out here in New Mexico. It's not a rural location. If we had downed, let's just say, going with the document, extraterrestrial vehicles in the greater Los Angeles area, even in 1942, it's a fairly populated area. It's hard to imagine we don't have witnesses or some other corroborative testimony to back that up. So I just try to be a little skeptical with regard to that. I think
it's a fair point. It's a fair point. When if I ever talk with Ryan Wood about that, I'm going to ask him about that document because I've really wondered about it.
Yeah,
and I haven't made a firm conclusion, but I think you make quite valid points here.
Yeah, I just like I said, I tend to be very conservative on some of those documents, and but I don't think that, to your point, that we should just ignore them. I mean, we can certainly review them and see if we can find information that we can maybe verify through other official sources. I made
the decision 15 years ago. I printed all of those documents off at one point, I bound them together. I've got them here somewhere. They're comb bound, and I just decided to read them all chronologically. And it's like this thick.
Oh my God.
It's an inch and a half thick. And I will just say, they're impressive in as a unit. And I just can't believe that they're all faked. There's too much power there. But I will take your point. And the fact is, we don't really have a National Archive provenance for them. And so we don't know. Anyway, I thought I would ask you that, and I appreciate your answer. What do you think this object was?
I do process of elimination, just like any investigator that's listening in on this right now. We try to ascertain, it was a commercial aircraft when we have a UFO sighting. Was it a satellite? Was it a meteor shower? You go through all the prosaic explanations. Like I said, at the end of my analysis, I try to do that. And I try to find an explanation, as I think we talked about at the beginning, Richard, an explanation that meets all the details in the case. And when you have skeptics that discount it as a balloon, they ignore the radar data. Again, object moving inbound 120 miles off the coast. The balloon doesn't comport or conform to that explanation. We've eliminated military aircraft, both United States and Japanese, as a possible explanation. We talked about jittery war nerves, right? And trigger happy men operating the anti-aircraft guns. Paranoia, hysteria can't be photographed or tracked on radar. So when I look at that, when I look at the characteristics and look at all of the information, I think that we're dealing with an object of unknown technology for 1942. And I'm not going to say extraterrestrial. I can't say that, but I just don't think it was ours. How about that?
I
It wasn't
very
ours.
much agree with you. I strongly agree with you. I felt this way for a long time. I think this is not, it's technological. I can infer, I'm sure you can infer that it was making it a demonstration, observation. I could see that happening.
And we have to keep in mind too, from a historical standpoint, this is just 2 years before the Foo Fighters started appearing in the late 44. So if you're going to put credence in the Foo Fighters, I mean,
well, they were Pacific Theater sightings that were even earlier than 1944.
Right. Yeah. European. I was thinking
Islands had something, I think, as early as 42, if I'm not mistaken.
So this, like you were saying about looking at the MJ12 documents in, looking at them in context, I think we have to look at the Battle of LA in context of the Foo Fighters that were reported, and then later the flying disc wave of 47.
Right.
We see this evolution, or this, maybe not so much an evolution in the phenomenon, but an evolution in our awareness of the phenomenon.